think I committed a crime. I mean, if some people feel that way, that's certainly their privilege, but I don't consider it a crime.
Bette Davis's daughter wrote a whole book that destroyed her mother's legacy. But after you hear what happened behind those mansion doors, you'll understand why she had no choice. These are the cruelest parents in old Hollywood history, and we are going to expose everyone. If you want to see how dark the Hollywood industry is, hit that subscribe button because we are about to reveal something that will shatter your perception about the Golden Age. Joan Crawford.
Also, although she spoke about her own past very, very little, the stories were always very sketchy, and in fact they changed over a period of time, so that it was difficult to tell what was indeed reality.
Let's start with the most infamous case in Hollywood history, which is Joan Crawford and her daughter Christina. It was between the 1940s and 1950s that Joan Crawford was the embodiment of Hollywood royalty. She was immaculate, quite posh, and ferociously driven, representing everything about the film industry. Her mansion in Beverly Hills was more like a shrine than a normal mansion. Every surface was clean and gleaming, and every object was in its designated place. Every public appearance was meticulously choreographed. But inside the mansion, her daughter Christina lived in a life that was completely different. There were no soft goodnights, no bedtime stories, no gentle mother-daughter time. There were only rules, fears, and rage that could erupt over something as trivial as a wire hanger left on the floor instead of being properly stored in the closet. Christina later wrote in her explosive memoir, Mommy Dearest, that her entire childhood was spent in terror. She was terrified of her mother. Crawford was obsessed with controlling others, and along with her public image, she demanded absolute obedience from her adopted children. When the cameras turned off and the studio photographers went home, she became more of a monster. The woman who the audience saw as elegant and composed would scrub floors in the evening in full evening gowns at 3 inches the morning, forcing her children to watch the punishment for even the most minor mistakes. She even punished Christina for mistakes so small that most people would just shrug them off, including a toy being left slightly out of place, which is normal for a kid. Crawford turned motherhood into a plethora of moments where frustration, insecurities, and her need for complete dominance mattered. Her children, being powerless and dependent, became an outlet for all the rage and absorption of that trauma throughout their childhood.
Beaten as a child, that you will then do the same thing as an adult. How do you feel about that, having been abused yourself? Do you have any children?
I have no children of my own. My husband's son, my stepson, lives with us. And I must say it's been one of the most wonderful experiences of my life.
After Mommy Dearest was published in 1978, a year after Crawford's death, it shocked the world, not only because of the brutality that was described in the pages, but because it revealed that one of the biggest Hollywood stars was living a dual life. The woman who had played strong, noble characters on stage and screen had been versed with her children off-screen. Crawford, of course, denied everything during her lifetime. She died with her public legacy intact, and the glamorous movie star was beloved by millions, but her children carried the truth in their bodies, memories, and minds. Christina's book wasn't even about revenge. It was more about survival and the final act of finally speaking a truth that had been suffocated by fame and image management for decades. But here's the saddest part. Joan Crawford generally believed she was being a good mother in her mind. The strict discipline was there to make her children better, but after she created her careful legacy, the truth came out regardless. Natalie Wood.
For years, actor Robert Wagner has fought rumors that he had something to do with the 1981 death of his wife, the Hollywood legend Natalie Wood. Now, he's opening up as never before in an interview with his own stepdaughter.
Next up is an even more interesting case of Natalie Wood, the luminous star of Rebel Without a Cause and West Side Story. She was Natasha Gurdon, a shy little girl with huge brown eyes and a mother who wanted everything for her except peace. Maria Gurdon pushed her daughter into acting at just 4 years old. She was convinced that fame would protect their immigrant family from poverty. They fled to Russia, but what fame brought was actually controlled suffocation and absolutely terrifying control. Maria managed every moment of Natalie's life. She chose everything from her roles, friends, and even monitored her emotions while inserting herself into every relationship that Natalie ever tried to form. This is peak human control. One of the cruelest examples of Maria's cruelty came during the filming of The Green Promise, when Natalie was just around 11 years old. The script called for a scene where Natalie's character would fall from a river, and there, Natalie was terrified of water. Since her childhood, she had been scared of water, plagued by nightmares, and always been afraid of drowning. She even begged her mother not to make her do the scene, where she even started crying and bleeding. But Maria's response was absolutely terrifying because she told the director to film it anyway. She told the director that it would look more realistic if Maria actually tried this, which is what Maria said during the shoot. The stunt even went wrong with the blade bridge collapsing early, and Natalie plunged into the churning water, which made her panic even more. It was real panic, real trauma that her own mother deliberately tried to add to her life. This fear never left Natalie, and it haunted her for the rest of her life. In 1981, Natalie would drown off Catalina Island under circumstances that remain mysterious to this date.
The world mourned her drowning at age 43 off the coast of Catalina Island in California following a night of drinking on board her yacht. Natasha was just 11 years old when her mother died.
She was just 43 years old, carrying the childhood terror of her mother that had inflamed and exploited. Maria never recovered from her daughter's death, but perhaps she never understood the deeper truth that Natalie's fear wasn't of water. It was of drowning in the crushing weight of her own mother's expectation. This just happened a decade before that final, fatal night. And before we move on to the next entry, please subscribe to the channel if you like seeing videos where we expose Hollywood legends. Judy Garland.
Do you have a stage mother, as we have heard about the stage mothers?
One that wouldn't quit. My mother was truly a stage mother.
Before Judy Garland was a legend, she was just a little Frances Gumm, a girl with an extraordinary voice, and a mother who saw dollar signs every time she saw her daughter open her mouth. Ethel Gumm was the archetype of the stage mother, and even made a template for every subsequent case that would be measured against. She pushed Judy to perform even when she was a child. She was exhausted, sick, and crying the rest of the time. She kept her daughter awake with amphetamines, and then calmed her racing heart with barbiturates, which is a chemical that would destroy Judy's health and steal whatever her childhood remained. When Judy was just 13, MGM Studios already fed her these amphetamines with her mother's full permission and encouragement. The studio wanted the young star to be thin, energetic, and always available for 18-hour shooting days. Ethel did not even see a child. Rather, she saw a rising star and just a cash cow that she could always count on. Judy would later say with devastating bitterness that, "My mother only loved me when I was working." Think about that for a moment. Imagine being a child and realizing that your mother's affection is conditional and that what she ever did for you was just transactional. That hurts really badly. This realization shaped everything about Judy's tragic life. Her endless string of failed marriages, desperate need for validation, and even her addictions that would keep coming back. Judy Garland also died because of a barbiturate overdose at the age of 47, which is the same pill that her mother started giving her until it consumed her life and took away a legend from us, Shirley Temple.
I was about 3 years old, and I worked for a year and a half as a starlet and learned discipline. I learned that time is money. I learned that it's work, not play.
And how did you learn?
Next up is another tragedy. Before there was Disney magic, there was Shirley Temple, the dimple-dancing child who carried America through the Great Depression on her small shoulders. With her ringlet curls, tap-dancing feet, and her impossibly cheerful smile, she wasn't just entertaining. She was the medicine for a nation that was drowning in the worst economic despair, along with hopelessness. When people couldn't afford food, they would still scrape together a few coins just to watch Shirley Temple sing and dance for 90 minutes. The world didn't seem so dark anymore. However, the cost of comfort was Shirley's childhood behind that perfect smile, where parents were more like leeches. They treated fame as a family business. Studios paid millions for movies, and she was literally the most profitable studio star in Hollywood during the 1930s, earning more than most adult actors. After Shirley turned 21 and finally gained legal control over her earnings, She discovered that she only got a tiny fraction. She discovered that only a tiny fraction of her own fortune remained. Her parents had already spent it, mismanaging it, and handled it carelessly. They claimed it was there to use, as the soft faith Shirley never publicly called it. She was too gracious for that, while being too aware of how her parents had struggled before money rescued them from poverty. She even called it a misunderstanding or a different era with different attitudes about children's earnings. But the truth was clear to anyone who was paying attention. The little girl who lifted millions of Americans from despair had no one to lift her when she needed it the most. Her childhood was already traded away and faded into darkness. Shirley survived her childhood better than most, eventually building a successful second career as a diplomat and ambassador. But in interviews later in life, when asked about her childhood, there was always a flicker of something in her eyes, something that she wasn't telling us, but it was definitely going on the back of her head. Bing Crosby's children.
That, well, my other brothers didn't. My dad never liked the size of my posterior. That's putting it nicely. He thought I was going to be a fat kid. So he picked a weight out of the air, and every Tuesday night I had to weigh that weight. And if I didn't weigh that weight, I got a whipping. So that meant that I weighed that weight, and he'd get it there at about a quarter of a pound. He'd say, okay, you're safe this time. Tremendous relief, okay? Now I start to steal all the food I can get, because the only things he ever let me eat were grapefruit and red meat.
Next up is Bing Crosby. And to the world, Bing was the voice of Christmas. Warm, soothing, timeless. His cover of White Christmas became the anthem of hope and nostalgia for millions. His songs converted people during World War II and the Depression. He was a gentle crooner, the all-American dad, but at home, his sons described a completely different man. Gary Crosby was the eldest son, revealed in his explosive memoir that behind Bing's gentle public smile was a tyrant with a heart of ice, using belt and fist to enforce respect and obedience. He demanded perfection from good grades to impeccable manners. Showing emotion was more of a weakness for their father. Crying was unexpected and unacceptable, and vulnerability was a sin. In an interview, Gary said plainly that their dad was a cruel, cold man who didn't know how to love. This discipline wasn't occasional or limited to major infractions. It was consistent and psychologically tiring. Bing's son lived in a perpetual state of fear, disappointment, and anxiety because the man who sang about dreaming of a white Christmas while making their actual home feel like a frozen wasteland is not a man. The ultimate tragedy of the Crosby family is written in statistics that cannot even be argued with. Two of the Bing sons, Dennis and Lindsay, would later die by suicide, unable to escape the psychological damage that was inflicted by their own father. Being crossed brought joy to millions of people around the world, but he left his heart away and made his family suffer. It's proof that fame, talent, money, and public adoration cannot teach a person empathy or how to be empathetic. And with that, our list of the worst parents ended. Who would you like to give the Oscar for being the worst? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and ring the bell icon for more.